Hello and welcome to another episode of the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football Channel. We're finally here. Week 1 prices for Draftkings NFL is out. And I am so excited about going over these prices. This is like a little kid opening a Christmas present on Christmas Day for me. I can't wait to get through these prices. I was a little bit late on this video. I noticed that they came out Friday, but some work things kind of went sideways for me, but we are finally here to talk about the week 1 prices. I can't wait to do it, so let's get after it. But before we do, hit that like, hit that subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to see more content from this channel on the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football Channel. I'm going to be covering DFS content all year long. I can't wait to go on this ride with you guys, and I hope that you enjoy this video. So, yeah, let's go ahead and get after it. Now we're on to the way too early first look for week 1 stud RBs. And at the top of this list, it's just obvious. Jonathan Taylor, he's a lock in cash games. And I would go on to say that he's good in any and all formats. Probably not a lock in GPPs, of course, but I'm down with getting Jonathan Taylor in any lineup I can possible at $9,100. That's a pretty decent price for him. Could be a lot higher when it's all said and done by the end of the season. We've seen guys like Christian McCaffrey and Todd Gurley getting that $10,000 range, and it would not surprise me if Jonathan Taylor ends up at that price point, because he's already starting so high at $9,100. Last year, I can't remember what his price was. I think it was in the $7K range. So this is a huge step for him, and excited to see where he goes this fantasy football season. Then we move on to Derrick Henry. We discussed that we were not very interested in Ryan Tannehill or his passing options. But I do have some interest in Derrick Henry at $8,600. I think he would be the best run back option if you were playing a Daniel Jones stack. We just discussed Daniel Jones being the best value of all the quarterbacks on this slate as of right now. Derrick Henry, probably the best run back option. And I think he's one of the best GPP options in general. If you were even to do a mini stack with him, I think he could get you there. The Giants were not very good against running backs last year, and that just goes to show that Derrick Henry might be a sneaky play because the guy under him, Christian McCaffrey, is only $8,500. I don't remember the last time I've seen Christian McCaffrey that cheap, fully healthy. So $8,500 for Christian McCaffrey, I think a lot of people are going to go that way, but the feel I have of this Browns and Panthers game, I think is going to fit Christian McCaffrey well than probably anybody else on that team. On the Panthers or even on the Browns, I might say. This could be a Christian McCaffrey explosion game. This might be the cheapest we see Christian McCaffrey for the rest of the year. So probably got to strike it while the iron's hot. I'm not completely sold on playing Christian McCaffrey over Jonathan Taylor in cash games, but that could be a way to get an edge on some opponents. So that's something we're going to have to dive into when we get closer to week 1. But as a first impression on this price point, I love Christian McCaffrey's price point. Then we move on to Austin Eckler. I love this price point as well. The Raiders were one of the worst teams against running backs last year. Pass catching backs, real running backs, anything and everything. I think this is a perfect price point for him. Like we were talking about earlier in the quarterback section, it's going to be hard to get to Justin Herbert at his price point. But if you're going to do some mini stacks with Austin Eckler and maybe some of the Raiders players we'll discuss here in a little bit, that's a perfect price point for mini stack purposes. So Austin Eckler is definitely on my radar. Then we move on to Dalvin Cook, who is injured right now. He broke a finger, I believe. Shouldn't be anything too serious for him to miss week 1. Should be plenty of time for him to recover. But I just don't have much interest in him in this game. I know like 2 years ago, early on in the year, he just went off on the Packers. I don't know if I can see him doing that again. I think this Packers defense is a lot better than what it was a few years ago. Finally tuned. So as of right now, Dalvin Cook, strictly a large field tournament play in the 150 plus lineups that we make. But I'm not playing him in single entry or small field GPPs or cash games as of right now. But there is someone under him, Alvin Kamara, that I'm pretty interested in. Alvin Kamara, $7,600. He could be facing a suspension for something that happened over the offseason, but as of right now, it looks like that trial got moved back 2 months. So the league might not discipline him until next season. So that's something to keep an eye on as we're getting closer to week 1. But I got a lot of interest in Alvin Kamara and this new head coach Dennis Allen-led offense. I'm curious to see how he's going to be utilized. If they're going to try to pursue him more in the passing game like they did in years past, or if they're going to use him more like they did last year as a pure runner. Either way, Alvin Kamara has some huge interest on my end. And then Joe Mixon, I think he's a great cash game play at this price point. $7,100 for Joe Mixon. This seems a little too cheap for me after the year he had last year. I think he will be somebody that you need to consider in your cash games if you need a cheaper running back. If you can't get 2 studs in like Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler or Derrick Henry, I think you can't go wrong with Joe Mixon at $7,100. Then we move on to James Conner at $7,000 flat. I don't really have a lot of interest in James Conner this week. I probably will use him a little bit in tournaments if I'm doing different variations of Kansas City Chiefs stacks if I do end up playing Patrick Mahomes. But as of right now, not very much interest on my end. I think he's just a little too expensive. DeAndre Swift, also somebody I think is a little too expensive. He was in the $5,000 range, high $5,000 range last year, and all of a sudden now he's boosted up to $6,800. Like, what are we supposed to think of this? Is just this being overhyped for season-long purposes, most likely? And I don't like that price point for him. I don't see him taking like an extended role. I mean, you still got Jamal Williams in that backfield. You still got Dan Quinn, the head coach of the Lions, that wants to switch in and out backs. And they went out and got a whole bunch of receivers this offseason, like in the draft and in free agency. TJ Hawkinson is back. I think they're going to want to throw the ball a little bit more. That might benefit DeAndre Swift because he is a pretty good pass catcher, but $6,800 is just a little too strong for me. I don't see him being in the same tier as a guy like Joe Mixon at this point. Hopefully I can eat my words and DeAndre Swift might prove me wrong, but as of right now, not very interested. But I am interested in Aaron Jones. He's been hyped to be the second round darling of all underdog drafts, and I completely agree. $6,700 is too cheap for him, just due to the fact that we've seen the game splits where Aaron Jones is on the field and Devontae Adams is off the field. Aaron Jones was averaging 25.2 Draftkings points, which would have been the number 1 running back in all of fantasy football last year if that were the case. So I'm all in on Aaron Jones, especially in the first 4 weeks of this season. I think Aaron Jones will be a big pivotal factor, and everything the Green Bay Packers are doing offensively, I think it's going to go through him. So passing game, running game, it doesn't matter. Just very interested. Then we move on to Nick Chubb at $6,500. For some reason, I can't get into this game regardless. Like, I don't know if it's just because Jacoby Brissett's the quarterback now, or Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold's controversy at the quarterback competition. I don't know what it is. But as of right now, I just don't have any interest in this Cleveland and Carolina game. Hopefully, I can get my mind persuaded a little bit as we get closer to week 1. just don't have a lot of interest. Then we move on to Najee Harris at $6,400. We had some unfortunate news about him. A couple days ago in training camp, he got his foot stepped on and he was taken out of practice. Coach Tomlin has said this is not to be a big deal, that he should be back on the field in about a week or two, but definitely something to keep an eye on as we're heading towards week 1. It's bad to already get started with some injuries when you haven't even played a full game yet. But if Najee Harris is 100% full go, I definitely got some interest in him because that price point is the same price point he started at last year. I believe he was like $6,000 or $6,400, somewhere around there last year. And I think that's a mistake. I think he should be a higher range running back. I think he should be ahead of James Conner and DeAndre Swift. And those two guys should be closer to where Najee Harris is. But yeah, that's my opinions on these stud RBs. Let's go ahead and move on to the mid-range RBs. Here in our way too early first look, week 1 mid-range running back prices, we got Josh Jacobs at the top here with $6,300. Probably my favorite play in this range is Josh Jacobs. I think he's too cheap, and I think this is a matchup that he really goes all out in. I believe in the last 4 games, he averaged somewhere around 17 Draftkings points against the Chargers. This is a good game environment, all around offensive game environment. I really like Josh Jacobs, and I think you should be rostering him in week 1 as of right now. Then we move on to Alexander Madison for the Minnesota Vikings. He's priced up pretty big to be a backup running back for Dalvin Cook, who we discussed earlier, having a finger injury. And I think that's probably the reason why he's priced up so high, just in case Dalvin Cook gets hurt. DraftKings is saving their bets because if Alexander Madison is the week 1 starter for some reason, he's pretty good, and he got some pretty good starting opportunities last year when Dalvin Cook missed games, and he put up some pretty big numbers, getting like in the 30s. So yeah, DraftKings is saving themselves by pricing him up at $6,200. That's probably a pretty wise bet if you were the one creating this site. So yeah, Alexander Madison, no interest as of right now, but it's someone we need to keep an eye on as the off-season, training camp, preseason progress. Then we move on to Saquon Barkley at $6,100. I think this is right where he's supposed to be. I didn't play Saquon Barkley probably at all last year, maybe a little bit, but I mean, yeah, he finally came back and did a couple things that were impressive after suffering all those injuries in years prior. But I just don't have a lot of interest in Saquon right now at $6,100. Just not my cup of tea. We move on to David Montgomery at $6,000 flat. I would like this play a lot more if they weren't playing the San Francisco 49ers. But yeah, it's hard to get into. $6,000. This could be a slow-paced game, though, and David Montgomery could get some goal line work in this game. As of right now, I don't have very much interest in David Montgomery. Then we move on to Mark Ingram at $5,900. One thing I've noticed that DraftKings did this year that they didn't really do a good job of last year was pricing up these backup running backs. We just talked about Alexander Madison, and Mark Ingram is another case. We just talked about Alvin Kamara for the Saints. Could serve a suspension before the season starts, but as we gotten closer and closer to week 1, it just seems more unlikely. The case got pushed back to 2 months. So I don't think any league punishment is going to come down on Kamara to maybe next season. But yeah, Mark Ingram at $5,900, too expensive. If Alvin Kamara's out, I like him more. But right now, just doesn't seem like an option. Then we move on to Cordell Patterson, who the Saints are facing, and he looks to be the starting running back, but I just don't think he can duplicate what he did last year. There was many weeks where I was saying he's not going to be able to top that performance. He's not going to be able to do that again. And week after week after week, he would prove me wrong. And then I ended up playing him a little bit towards the middle to the end of the season after I saw, hey, this is actually kind of legit. So in this game environment, I don't have much interest in Cordell. Maybe a GPP play at best, but not very much interest on my end. And now we move on to Antonio Gibson, who I'm not feeling very good about Antonio Gibson. I wish I could feel better about him because this game environment is just huge and wide open for all kinds of possibilities. We just discussed how we were interested in Carson Wentz and Trevor Lawrence in this game environment, and I'm also interested in this game environment in the run game. Antonio Gibson's got a Q tag. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. He's also been dealing with a foot injury that lasted all the way since last offseason. I just don't think he's someone I'm going to be able to target with all these injury designations. Hopefully he can get healthy and cleared by the time week 1 starts. But I will be treading lightly on my usage on him in the early weeks of the season. I want to see how he performs. Probably not going to be playing in the preseason due to his sensitive injury history. But if we go ahead and move on to Damian Harris at 5,700, there's been reports that Ramondre Stevenson could be replacing him as a starting back. Those are all just hearsay rumors as of right now, but that's definitely a camp battle that we need to keep an eye on in the preseason and in training camp. We just need to see if there's any weight to that statement that Stevenson could be replacing Harris. Now we move on to Kareem Hunt at 5,700. Like I said before, I'm having a hard time finding interest in this game. But I guess if I were to pick somebody, I think Baker Mayfield probably is going to try to get not Baker Mayfield. Damn, I'm going to say that a few times. I'm not used to Baker Mayfield being on the Panthers yet. My bad. But I could see Jacoby Brissett maybe getting Kareem Hunt a little bit involved in the passing game if they're behind. I just don't know what to make of this game yet. We just got to wait. Maybe a couple weeks from now, I'll have a better opinion about this game. Travis Etienne for the Jacksonville Jaguars, listed as questionable, but should be back by week 1. $5,600 is pretty cheap. And the Washington Commanders were not terrible at stopping the run last year, but they weren't great either. They were kind of middle of the pack. So, yeah, I mean, I got some interest in him, but not very much as of right now. James Robinson, 5,600 as well. They both play for the same team. They're both priced the same. It looks like his injury that he was dealing with, he's coming along pretty quickly. I still think Travis Etienne is the starting back at the end of the day, but this could be the 1-2 punch that we've been looking for in the early years of Kamara and Ingram. We enjoyed watching this, and I could definitely see this being a 1-2 punch in that backfield. So definitely something to keep an eye on as the month progresses into September. J.K. Dobbins looks like he's on track to be a week 1 starter. Other than reports from like Ian Rappaport saying that there's chances that he could miss. I mean, I could still see him possibly getting a setback. I'm not completely sold that he's going to be the starter, but let's just put it this way. Whoever is going to start for Baltimore, I want to be involved with. Gus Edwards, someone we're just going to discuss here in a little bit. Someone else I could be very interested in at that time because 5,600 for J.K. Dobbins against the Jets defense, who, by the way, was the worst defense against all running backs in fantasy football last year. This could be a smash. So J.K. Dobbins is definitely a player to keep an eye on, along with the rest of the Baltimore backfield. But yeah, those are my mid-priced running backs that I'm interested in, not interested in. Let's go ahead and move on to those low-priced running backs. Now we're on to our way too early first look at the Week 1 RBs for potential sleepers in this low price range. To top it off, we got Ramondre Stevenson at 5,500. There's rumors in Patriots training camp that Stevenson could be taking the lead back role. That's all hearsay as of right now, but that's something that we need to watch as it potentially can unfold under our eyes in this training camp, in this preseason games that we'll get to watch. So, Stevenson could be a very interesting pickup if he's named the starter. Then we move on to Miles Sanders at $5,400. I just have not been able to get him right at all since the very beginning of his career. I drafted him so much in best ball drafts last year that I lost a lot of money. So I was real excited about him last year. I'm not as excited about him this year. But this matchup with the Lions is kind of interesting. Lions were one of the worst teams against running backs last year. I'm sure they improved some. I don't know if this is going to be a running back by committee or if this is going to be Miles Sanders' backfield. This is the first time he's been healthy to start a training camp in forever. Hopefully he can stay that way because the last 2 training camps he's tweaked a hamstring or something else, I believe, where one year, I think it was in 2020, he missed the first week because of a training camp injury. And then last year, he just never got fully acclimated to the Eagles' offense that they were running with the new head coach, Nick Sirianni. So, as of right now, I don't have a lot of interest in Miles Sanders. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire at $5,400 is in the same boat. He's got to prove to me that he is better than what he's shown. I kind of got a little more excitement about Clyde Edwards-Helaire than I do Miles Sanders, with them both being at the same price point. I think this is important to discuss. Kind of like Aaron Jones without Devontae Adams, I could see Clyde Edwards-Helaire's fantasy production shooting up now that Tyreek Hill is not there anymore. It's definitely something to keep an eye on as we get closer to the Week 1 part of the season. But as of right now, just mild GPP interest for me on both Sanders and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Then we move on to Elijah Mitchell, who's also in that same price range. He just kind of came out of nowhere last year and produced at a very high level. I don't know if he can duplicate that. I mean, the 49ers got a pretty crowded backfield. If he can, like right now, everyone is assuming he's the starter, but that could very well change before Week 1. So that's something else that we need to keep an eye on because there will definitely be some value if, for some reason, Kyle Shanahan decides to go another way with it. Then you got the newly acquired running back for the Miami Dolphins, Chase Edmonds, at $5,200. I'm kind of excited about him being the lead back, but I don't know if this is the game to do it in. But if you are to try to attack a Patriots defense, last year they were a little below or over average against running backs for a fantasy perspective last year. And I definitely could see Edmonds getting involved in that passing game a little bit better against a team like the Patriots. Mild interest only. Then we move on to Gus Edwards for the Baltimore Ravens. Also mild interest unless J.K. Dobbins gets named the starter. I will have no interest. But if J.K. Dobbins gets rolled out, Gus Edwards could be the value running back that we all been looking for. But yeah, right now, no interest there. Marlon Mack at $4,700. Not a lot of interest there. I think the Texans are going to be playing from behind pretty early, so they're going to be involved in the passing game. Marlon Mack hasn't played in over a year, so it'll be interesting to see what he does at that price point, but I just can't get behind it right now. Kenny Gainwell at $4,600. A little bit interesting against Detroit. Like I said, I don't know what they're going to be doing, if they're going to be a backfield committee or if they're letting Miles Sanders take over that lead role. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, we'll get a little more info as we get further into training camp, but as of right now, not a lot of interest there. Tony Jones Jr. of the New Orleans Saints at $4,500. I'll have a little bit more interest in him if Alvin Kamara, for some reason, was to get suspended or miss the first week of the season. I could kind of see the 1-2 approach with him and Mark Ingram, but not a lot of interest, not enough to like say you should play him or not. But like I said, it's still early in the off season, preparing, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, those are the potential sleepers. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is somebody to keep an eye on. Elijah Mitchell and that whole backfield is something to keep an eye on. Chase Edmonds. But other than that, not a lot of interest for me. Let's go ahead and move on to the rookie running back prices. Now we're moving on to the way too early first look at the week 1 rookie running backs. Bryce Hall sits at the top there at 5,500, and not a lot of interest there. I think this Baltimore defense is going to be a lot better than it was last year, but even looking at the stats here, they were pretty good against the run. Baltimore was just bad against opposing fantasy quarterbacks and opposing fantasy wide receivers last year. So not much interest in Breece Hall, especially at that price point, because you also got to realize Michael Carter-Williams is still there. I don't know if Breece Hall will make that big of an impact the first week of the season. Then you got Hassan Haskins at 5,000 flat. I still think he's a bit overpriced. This is purely, I think, off of what Underdog is projecting Hassan Haskins to go. Same thing with Breece Hall. They're just completely overpriced. If you look at Hassan Haskins, a lot of people are saying Dontrell Hilliard is going to be the backup to start the season. But, I mean, we got a lot of competitions here in the offseason for running backs, and this is one of them. For that backup role, who's going to take it, Hassan Haskins or Dontrell Hilliard? That will be a very interesting preseason training camp competition to keep an eye on. We discussed the San Francisco backfield situation. Tyrion Davis-Price as somebody who was drafted to be the backup to Elijah Mitchell, but he could very well do what Elijah Mitchell did last year and outperform everybody. It's a possibility. That backfield is not set in stone. Let's just put it that way. There are certain backfields that are set in stone, and that's not one of them. I could definitely see Tyrion Davis-Price going out in the preseason. Elijah Mitchell has been pretty fragile. He got hurt off and on last year, so Tyrion Davis could be that reliable piece that the 49ers have been needing. So keep an eye on that. Isaiah Spillard's another guy that's a bit overpriced for the role that we think he's going to have right now. But that could obviously change into the preseason and training camp. So another thing to keep an eye on. I think he could be more of the red zone back, getting those short yardage rushes. I think it's going to end up being his job. But that's definitely not set in stone yet. So I think that's a little bit of a pause for the cause until we know more. Dameon Pierce, more expensive than Marlon Mack, kind of indicates that he may be the starting rookie running back that we're all waiting for. I think Breece Hall is going to start. I think Dameon Pierce is going to start as well. More expensive than Marlon Mack. I think he gets more of the workload as well. But that's another thing to keep an eye on in training camp and in preseason. Just got to wait and see. Zamir White for the Las Vegas Raiders was pretty much drafted to replace Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake, I don't think he's going to end up being the backup, but I could be wrong. I mean, this could be a couple-week process. You got to remember, these guys are just rookies. It takes a little while to get control of that playbook, and if Josh McDaniels thinks Zamir White's not ready, Kenyon Drake will be there to back up Josh Jacobs. But yeah, that's another thing we got to wait and see on. Then we got Tyler Algier for the Atlanta Falcons. He looks to be the guy that's going to take over this role at some point of the season. I don't think it's going to be week 1. A lot can happen from now to week 1. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. I like Tyler Algier. I could definitely see him being a big factor for Atlanta in the future, but I don't think it's going to be for week 1. Brian Robinson Jr. for the Washington Commanders. We discussed Antonio Gibson earlier. If he cannot stay healthy, Brian Robinson could be very well be the starting running back for the Washington Commanders. And even if Gibson is a go for week 1, he's going to be the goal line back. It's already been discussed. I'm real excited to see where Brian Robinson can go in this offense, and that's a name to keep an eye on as we get closer to week 1. And round off this list, we got rookie Tyler Batty. I don't think he's going to have any kind of factor for week 1. He's got some guys ahead of him, some veterans ahead of him, and J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Mike Davis. So, I don't see much happening for him. But those are the top rookie running backs that we're keeping an eye on. We'll just have to wait and see how this training camp and this preseason goes before we have any interest in rostering any of these guys. There's definitely not as much excitement as there has been in years past for rookie running backs, in my opinion. To round it off, our way too early favorite stud running back is Jonathan Taylor, facing the Houston Texans, one of the worst defenses against fantasy running backs. Last year, Jonathan Taylor looks to be the top guy, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be rostering him in all formats. Don't question it, just do it. One of our way too early favorite mid-range running backs has to be Josh Jacobs at 6,300, playing against the Chargers, who were one of the worst ranked fantasy teams against the run last year. In the last 4 games he's played against the Chargers, he's averaged 17.5 fantasy points. This is something we're just not going to be able to avoid. Lock in Josh Jacobs for week 1. Our way too early favorite rookie running back has to be Brian Robinson Jr. of the Washington Commanders. I just think Antonio Gibson's not very healthy right now, and I feel like Brian Robinson Jr. could be that guy that when we're looking for some value at running back, he's going to be someone that strikes us interest. And we also have a good idea of him possibly being the red zone back, even if Antonio Gibson is in the game. So as of right now, Brian Robinson Jr. looks pretty good at this price point, and against his opponent in Jacksonville, who wasn't very good against the run last year, I'm considering Brian Robinson Jr. We just got to kind of wait until things kind of break down as we get closer to week 1. Thanks for watching the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football channel. I am your host, Jacob Brown. We got more videos available. We got the quarterback breakdown video available, the wide receiver breakdown video available, and also the tight end breakdown video available as well. And we got our Patreon, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube account, of course, available with all the content that we will be pushing out, getting prepared for week 1. If you like this video, if you got anything from this video, drop a like, hit that subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to see more content just like this. And we will see you next time on the Losers Win Again Fantasy Football channel.